Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? This is Colin, back at it again with episode 26 of A New Direction, the podcast where I talk about all sorts of things, ranging from a variety of topics, and just kind of give my opinions and advice on different things. And today I'm coming at you with a regular four topic episode, although honestly, all these topics are very intertwined. Um, and so I'm just going to give a quick, brief warning. If you are not a fan of historical content, I am going to do my best to make this as interesting as possible for you. And I would also like to say that I tinkered with my video settings a little more. You might notice that the field of view is a little wider. I got the webcam recording at a higher resolution. It was already recording at 1080p, but like I didn't have my settings configured properly to get everything. Like it was like cropping the image or something. And so I ended up getting everything sorted out with that. So we've got the wider field of view. I got a tapestry put up as well. This is something new. Shout out to my dad for putting this up. I also have one behind my bed over here, and then also in the background, that is my Greco guitar. Still going to be working on trying to get a review video done for that because I finally got like a way to record it now on my computer. I bought Bias FX 2, which is a amp simulator software that I run on my computer. And I'm still kind of working with that, tinkering with it, much like the video settings, to get the best sort of results with that. And so once I get that sorted out and figured out, I'll definitely try to record like a review for this guitar. And then my acoustic guitar is over here, and my banjo is also over there as well. But yeah, hopefully this looks a little better, a little brighter, and a little more crisp. That's what the goal was. And so I thought it looked pretty good right off the bat. But those are just some updates for the channel as far as content and settings and different things that have changed here. And I also want to say before we dive in that I'm recording this at 1 a.m. the day it comes out. So I'm a little tired. I worked a long shift today, but I got to get the content out there for y'all. And I really enjoy doing these. So I don't mind staying up late for it. But with that being said, we're going to dive in, and like usual, we're going to start with the music recommendation. And so today we are going to be recommending December Moon by Morbid. And December Moon is not necessarily the album, but it is the original recordings for the band. And so Morbid actually has a connection with Mayhem, who is my favorite band. And so the most like well-known vocalist of Mayhem was an individual. His stage name was Dead. He was Swedish, and so he moved from Sweden to Norway to join Mayhem in like 80. I think it was like 88 when he joined the band at the time. So he actually left Morbid to join Mayhem, and so that's kind of where the connection is. That Dead departed from Morbid and joined Mayhem. However, Morbid's like one release, I guess, is with Dead on vocals, and it's really, really solid. I mean, there are some really just evil sounding tracks on this album, and it came out in like 1986. The original recording was done, so to be as old as it is, like it is bumping. Like it's heavy and just raw and kind of goofy in some parts as well. Like it's definitely a very solid Swedish like death metal album. And I think it's also important to note that some of the members of Morbid went on to become members of the band Entombed, which is a very, very popular and well-known Swedish death metal band. So it's kind of cool that all of these people were kind of connected back in the day with music and everything. Dead being in Mayhem and Morbid, and then Morbid going on to becoming Entombed. Like everything going on in like Scandinavia back in the 80s and 90s was just crazy with music. Like, I don't know, some crazy good bands were kind of around. And so yeah, I would give this album like a 9 out of 10, honestly. Like, it's really, really good. And shout out to Devin for introducing me to it. I had heard of Morbid. I had never listened to any of their music, but I had heard of them. And so Devin had came to me and told me that they were really good. And he actually said he kind of preferred it to Mayhem, which was a little surprising to me. And so I checked it out, and it is really, really good. I can understand why he feels that way. Me personally, I think I still prefer Mayhem, but Morbid is really good. Highly recommend giving this a listen. But with that being said, we're going to jump into the meat and potatoes of this episode. And like I said in the warning at the beginning, and so if you're still here after surviving that warning, shout out to you, because I know some people will hear like historical content and just like, be gone. That's it. They're done. So to everybody who's made it this far, shout out to you. I appreciate you. And so today we're going to be having a historical chat, and I'm just going to talk about my love of history, kind of why I like it, where it came from, my thoughts on the evolution of, humans over time and culture, and just all sorts of great things, archaeology, a variety of historical topics. And I think in general, this is a fascination that I share with a lot of people. A lot of people are interested in the past, and, there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from the past. The adage that history repeats itself is definitely very true. And if you are in a situation and you feel that may be applicable, if you go back and do some research, you will probably find that it happened, or whatever you're stressed out about or thinking about has definitely happened before, at least in some point in human history. So with that being said, we're going to dive right in here. So my first sort of topic was my love of history, my history with history, I guess, if you will. And so I've always loved history. As far as, in school, history was definitely my favorite subject, I would say. Apart from English, I also really loved English, and I really liked to write. And I was a huge reader for a long time, and actually have some books that I need to start reading. Shout out to my mom. She keeps reminding me about that, and I keep not reading them. So maybe I'll actually sit down and read some of these books. They're out in the hallway. I'll have to check and see what they are, and maybe I'll feature them in the next episode or something like that. But yeah, I that's kind of off topic. But anyway, as far as history goes, like I was saying, all throughout school, even in elementary school, history was just my thing. Like, I was fascinated by learning about events that, predated me, because me being born, I was born in 2003. So a lot of people will hear that and be like, oh, you're so young. And I mean, it's true, but, there are so many events that have happened since then as well. And, I think the fascination kind of carries on with the newer generations. I think there are a lot of people who are kind of fascinated by things that have happened before their time. And so I was, one of those people. I was incredibly curious about, ancient cultures and history and events that happened, long ago that are documented, and, knowledge is firm about it. Like, there's concrete evidence of these things, and that is really fascinating to me. And so I would say that, like I had said, I had always loved history, but I really found my real appreciation and care for it, I think, in high school. In my freshman year, and I've talked about this, my freshman year, I took a AP Human Geography class. And human geography, part of that was covering, like, literally the entire span of history culturally. And so that really sparked a very, I guess, flame in me, if you will. From then on, I was very fascinated with learning about, history and stuff. And I must also point out that my history fascination, it didn't start there, but I guess my continued research of history began there. But my grandfather is a notable figure for my love of history in general. I remember being young, and we would just have talks about history, and he would tell me about things that had happened and, experiences that he had had. And, we would... I even recall, I think, watching like some documentaries or, stuff like that. He would buy me books and stuff on ancient culture, different wars and whatnot. I actually have all of those books. So shout out to you, Pops. You are a legend, and I love you and appreciate all of the historical knowledge that you have bestowed upon me. Without it, I would probably not have the love of history that I have today. But yeah, I think freshman year with that AP Human Geography class really sparked like my continued interest in researching history. It became rather like an on and off thing to something that I've really kept up with to this day. I love researching ancient history and ancient culture. I think my interest in different ones kind of had like a gradual change. I remember distinctly in elementary school, I was nominated for Terrific Kid, which was like this award thing that you would select, and I think each class had one, and I was the Terrific Kid a few times. And I remember one time, my presentation that they did, like they had mentioned my love of ancient Egyptian history and knowledge and stuff. And, that was back in like third grade. So, even back then, and I remember I went to the library and checked out a book called Tales Mummies Tell. And it was a book about mummies all around the world, various, natural mummies, man-made or, man-preserved mummies, the Egyptian mummies, animal mummies, all sorts of mummies. There were a variety of mummies covered in that book, and that really sparked my love of ancient Egypt, I think, when I read that book, and I kind of got a little obsessed about that. And then also the Rick Riordan books. There was a Egyptian series he wrote. The Kane Chronicles, I believe, is what it was called. And I only read the first one, but that kind of got me into it as well. A lot of my reading or recreational reading at the time was historically based. Percy Jackson got me way into Greek culture, and then when I guess the Percy Jackson like sequel came out, where they added in the Roman camp as well. All of those books, I read all of them. The original Percy Jackson series and the sequel series as well. I read all of those books. House of Hades was my favorite out of that sequel series. I loved those books. Those really got me into Roman culture as well. And so, history in general, as you can tell, has definitely been a huge part of my educational career. Has been a huge part of what I have sort of found myself doing in my free time, I guess. Like, I research a lot of history in my free time. I like to sit and learn about different events, different battles, like I was saying, different cultures, religions, different historical figures, both who would be considered good or bad, depending on your perspective. But just in general, like, it's very fascinating to read to like the like parts of history, I guess, that are obscured through education as well, like the events that you don't talk about in school, like America's role in Vietnam and some of the things that went on there, the war crimes that the Japanese committed in World War II is one of the things that was never talked about in school. There's a lot of things that are brushed over, and so I think it's very fascinating to kind of go deeper and research those things. But with that being said, that kind of covers like my love of history, my why I appreciate it and why I like it. So we're going to transition on into like my thoughts of how human culture and just like humans in general have changed over time. Recorded history is only like I think it's like a 12,000 year span. Like, and they say humans have been around for considerably longer than that, but recorded history only goes back so far. And I just think it's so fascinating the way we have these cultures that we know existed, like the Sumerians and the Akkadians and all these original sort of groups of people that founded these civilizations and, had technology and were advanced for their time. I mean, it's incredible to me how, even way back, like in the 3000 BC era, like, these people were doing complex mathematical equations and calculating, astronomical distances and all sorts of crazy things that, like, even now, like, is kind of, I guess, difficult for the common person. And these people back in the day with no technology at all, like what we have, the advantages of the technology we have, at least, like, they were still coming up with these things. And it's also been found that sometimes these ancient people were more accurate than we are. And, I think that's just crazy. And I don't know, it's just like the way culture has changed over time. Like the Greeks kind of had their pantheon of gods, Zeus and, Ares and Hera and all these different gods that the Greeks had. And then they became they transitioned or evolved into the Roman pantheon of gods, who were the same. Like, they were the same gods, just with different names and slightly different features in general, and they were pretty much the same deities. I think that stuff like that's crazy. Like the Roman Empire especially is one of my favorite things to study historically, because I find that like the Roman Empire was just such a long span of time, and so they were so powerful and advanced, and just the influence that they had on the world can still be seen today. Like the impacts that Rome played in just society and government and philosophy and all of these different areas that are very important today, and they still hold true. Like the Romans were definitely ahead of their time, and I definitely think my fascination with Rome is driven by the fact that everything was very documented at the time. The Roman Empire was just that. Like it was a very large and powerful empire that had access to a variety of technologies, and so they were able to record this these events that happened, and these reported conversations and wars and political events, and all this stuff is like documented, and I think that's crazy. Like that back then, thousands of years ago, I guess that would have been, I think Rome was founded in, I think they say like 500 BC. So starting from there on, like, we kind of have documented stuff, especially from the time around like the year zero, and a little bit before that, that first kind of century or last century BC. We have a lot of information there, a lot of knowledge about different emperors and people who ruled at the time, and I'm just very fascinated by that. Like the different like rumors about Nero, how he played like a fiddle while Rome was burning down, and how he orchestrated the fire, and all this different stuff. Like it's crazy. Like it's crazy to read about individuals who were just so powerful. Like the Emperor of Rome was just an incredibly powerful position. Like you had access to, Lord knows, like an amount of wealth incomprehensible. Like you could literally have whatever you wanted to as the Emperor of Rome. Like you were never going to be hard or strapped for money, luxury items, clothing, transportation. You like it was the utmost echelon of luxury being like the Emperor of Rome. And it's just crazy to me how these people were just like almost deified. Like these emperors became like gods in a way, and it's just crazy. And especially like the art too, that's kind of on like a completely different sort of area, but the art from these cultures, like the fact that we still have like pottery and stuff that they made, we've kind of been able to see their architecture, how they built their buildings and the materials they used. I just think it's all very fascinating. Like, and I mean, I'm using the word fascinating a lot, but it's just really the only way I can describe it. Like, it just fascinates me. And I just think that, especially, ancient history is particularly fascinating to me. But even still, like, after that, you have a whole, like, span of time from, like, 0 to, 2000, where you have a whole bunch of religious conflict going on with like the Catholic Church and everything, and you've got like the Crusades that happen, the Renaissance. The Renaissance is something that I really love, especially the musical side of the Renaissance. I love learning about the artists and seeing the works and just the music and the paintings and all the amazing things that came out of the Renaissance. I think that was one of the greatest eras of human history. So many amazing, discoveries, and Isaac Newton and everything with gravity, and all this stuff is kind of attributed to the Renaissance era, and I just think that's a very great time for humans. But I also think that even post Renaissance, 1500 to now, like there's so many different things to cover. You've got the colonization of the West, with the United States, or I guess beginning, colonial era. I guess where Christopher Columbus originally landed, which was not the mainland U.S. actually. But you have there, and then it kind of spread everywhere to the coast, the East Coast, and then through the South, the Midwest and Southwest, how, and then like westward, and I just think it's crazy, like how the United States, the country that it is today, like is all that land that has been developed in these states. Like if you were to go back to colonial era, like, and look out west, it was all barren. Like there was nothing. Like imagine how many lush forests and oases hidden away there were. And like imagine the adrenaline of getting to explore that and to discover all those things. I think that would be amazing. And American history is something that I'm passionate about as well. And I've talked about that as well on the podcast. The Civil War especially is something that I'm very fascinated by. But the Revolutionary War, actually, I have personal ties to the Cowpens battlefield, which is located in Cowpens, South Carolina. It was the site of a fairly major battle of the American Revolution, and there's actually a wooden cabin located on the battlefield, and that wooden cabin was actually owned by one of my ancestors, which I think is crazy. And like he was there during the battle, and afterwards he went out and got like a bunch of souvenirs and stuff off the battlefield, and ended up donating all of that to the Smithsonian. So chances are, if you go to the Smithsonian, the American History Museum or whatever, I believe is one of them. I've been to the Smithsonian, but I cannot remember off the top of my head the different ones that there are. But the American History Museum, if you go and see different muskets and stuff there is a chance that they actually had some personal interaction with one of my ancestors, which is pretty dope. I think that's really dope. But yeah, I visited there and seen it, and it's just crazy. The fact that my ancestor was living with all his kids in that little cabin, like, could not be me. Like, personally, I don't think I could do that. I don't think I would be able to keep my sanity that way. But times were different. People were different. But like I said, the Civil War, Gettysburg especially, but just like the politics of the Civil War as well is very fascinating to me, and how the election with Abraham Lincoln was very controversial, and the so-called, I guess, slippery slope that occurred afterwards with South Carolina, funnily enough, being the first to secede. And they tried to start this whole new country on the same continent as the United States. So it's like, for one, how is that going to work diplomatically? Like, I really don't feel like the Confederacy had thought it through all that well. Like, assuming they did win the war, like, how is the relations between the Union and the Confederacy going to go? Like, they are literally on the same continent and connected. Like, diplomacy, not going to be good. Political, partnerships, not going to happen. I don't really know what they were thinking with that, but I think that the fact that South Carolina, I guess, played such a pivotal role in the Civil War is cool to me, because I live in South Carolina. I've actually been to Fort Sumter and seen where the first battle of the Civil War actually went down, when the Confederate militia, or the South Carolina militia, the Confederate Army actually wasn't a thing at the time, had not been established yet, but the South Carolina militia actually fired on Fort Sumter, which was controlled by the Union, of course, and took it. And this occurred in 1861. And so with that, the battle, the Civil War began. And there's also like the Uss Hundley, I believe. It was the first submarine ever used, as far as I'm aware. It was a Confederate submarine. It was designed by, the Confederate side, and it was actually successfully used in battle, but it did sink And that was located in South Carolina, I believe, or off the coast of South Carolina, and is able to be seen somewhere in the state at a museum. So that's pretty dope as well. I think like South Carolina just has a very rich history as well, just like my own state history, and how it changed over time. Because Carolina was one of the first colonies of the, or I guess one of the first major colonies of the colonial era. And South Carolina was one of the first few states to be admitted into the Union as well. I don't think it was in the top 5, maybe the top 10 or 15 to be admitted into the Union. Actually, maybe it was in the top 5. I think it was in the top 10. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but just going off of my off the top of my head knowledge, South Carolina has a very rich history as well. And so I just think like I'm just going on and on here about this, and it kind of proves like there's just so much to learn about. And I think learning history is very valuable. Like I said, like it's very valuable to learn about why things happen, get the full story on these events that we learn about, these wars that happen, learning about why they happen, the disputes that are going on. And I know that's kind of more political, but just like the things that happened in the past, like the Civil War, learning about how, states' rights and slavery was a huge division point between the Union and the northern states who were abolitionist states, and the plantation industry in the South. They conflicted so much with one another that they were literally willing to fight and kill each other to die for that ideology. And I was actually reading about this guy who was he was like a farmer. He was a plantation owner at first, and then he was old, but he fought in the Union. Or no, he did not. He fought against the Union in the Confederacy. Excuse me. He was diehard Confederate, slave owner, states' rights. He was the full shebang. And actually, when the Union won the war, this guy literally committed suicide over the Confederate loss of the Civil War. He committed suicide. And he left a note that said something along the lines of, I would rather die than live in a Yankee-controlled country. And it's just crazy to me that, how passionate people can be about their ideas and the things that they believe. And I think historically that is very important to learn about why people, do what they do, how things have changed over time, and how, how history can, how we can learn lessons from history to not repeat it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that's just why I like to learn about history so much. And, like I had originally started off with the evolution of culture, I think culture is something that connects everybody. We all have unique cultures and, things that we believe in. We all have our own unique, ideas. And I just think like seeing how these ideas have played out over time is really cool and valuable. So culture has definitely played a huge part on history. Culture has changed, but has been a center point all the way through. And so that's why I like to learn about culture so much. Different religions, seeing how, different parts of the world have come up differently. And so what they believe is different from what, I believe, or what people in my country believe. I think it's very valuable to appreciate all perspectives. And, history allows us to do that. We can see all perspectives because it's already happened. And I mean, I'm not sitting here trying to say that history is always accurate and always correct. History is written by the winners. But, when you have actual, documented evidence of stuff going on and historical events, I think it's very valuable to see both perspectives and learn about in-depth the conflicts and everything that was going on. But with that being said, we are now going to branch into archaeology, which is connected with history. And, if I'm not boring you all to tears by now, I don't know, I think archaeology is just really cool. The fact that we can go back and like dig up things that have been buried for thousands of years and were last touched by human beings just like you and me, or like that the fact that Julius Caesar, Augustus Caesar, and all these different, Roman emperors and powerful people who waged wars and, were just incredibly successful in battle and ultimately grew the Roman Empire. Like, all of these people experienced life the same way you and I do, out of the same perspective, the same eyes. Now, obviously, things were different, times were different, culture was different, but they lived the same way I am right now. And that can be said going back as far, even as the 80s, like Euronymous, my favorite guitarist who passed in the 90s, the early 90s, he wrote all this music that I just love. And, he experienced life the same way I do, through the same perspective. It's just crazy to me. And it's a way that I try to empathize, like, even with people who have been long dead for millenniums. I'm able to empathize with them because, we have a shared human experience to a degree. And so archaeology is a way that we can sort of have a look back into the lives of people who lived far before us. And even further back than that, we have dinosaurs, we have, extinct species of animals, both on land and in the sea, that were non-dinosaur. Insects, bugs, all sorts of just incredible species of animals that have been long dead that we know about and are able to know what they look like. And just, it's crazy what archaeology enables us to do and what, enables us to know as a species, about ourselves. And archaeology especially is cool to me when it deals with like ancient civilizations, these ancient mounds, Native American Indian mounds in North America. We excavate them and learn about the lifestyles of these people who originally lived here. We can go back and look at the lives of the Sumerians, who were the first major civilization of the recorded historical era. We have buildings that they built and, all sorts of artifacts from their time. Going further, we have artifacts from the time of Christ. We've got the Roman buildings and all the different, inscriptions, the Colosseum. We've got all of these different things from Roman history that we can still see and visit today. We've got swords and tombs and weapons and skeletons and mummies and animals. And, we've got old alcohol and factory. Like, it's just crazy what people have found excavating these ancient sites. And it's crazy to have that insight into the lives of ancient people. I just think archaeology is an incredible thing. And there was a time in my life when I wanted to be an archaeologist. And archaeology is still something that's fascinating to me today. I still love reading about, archaeological discoveries. It's always in my Google feed on my phone. I love reading about that kind of stuff and how it ties in with history. I think is so important. I think that archaeology is one of the most important, scientific fields, because archaeology allows us to, like I've said, peek into the past and, learn about times that we can only hear about in history books. Like, we have firsthand experience with those time frames because of archaeology. And I think that's incredible. And, I guess that's lastly going to tie us into here, my continued search for knowledge in history and, why I think it's important. And I've kind of brushed on that over and over the whole video, but to condense it all down, I think it is important to continue to expand your knowledge of history, because history is one of the most valuable assets we have to learn with. Because, like I said near the beginning of the video, if it's something you can imagine, it has probably happened. Like, there are probably historical accounts or experiences with people that are recorded such that you are able to learn and understand these things. And so I don't know. I think that it's very important to learn history. I think it's very important to have an open mind, to appreciate all perspectives, and to be willing to learn about cultures that are different from your own and, have, played out their time. We can always learn from everything. And, the government of the United States even is democracy based on, the original form of democracy, which, we've got Athens and Greece, which is probably the most well-known democracy of the historical era. We've got stuff like that our very government is modeled on. The effects of ancient culture and history can still be seen and still has a daily impact on each and every one of us. And I think that's why it's important to learn about history. I think it's cool to see where all of this stuff and all of the human experiences that we have come from. I live in a country, like I said, with a government that is based on the ideas from long past, with technology that has been, obviously much more advanced than anything in the past. But, the technology that I have and the luxuries that I have, probably give me the same feeling of luxury that the Romans would have had with their, having toilets and plumbing and stuff and air conditioning. Even like the Romans had AC in their buildings, like they would do the air channels in the walls and all this shit. And I don't know, it's crazy, like stuff like that. I think it's important to know about that stuff. But as far as stuff that I've researched lately, the Civil War has definitely been something I've read a lot about. Music, rock, the history of rock and roll, the history of different bands, Mayhem, Morbid, bands that I've been into lately. I think the history of different, technological stuff. Like I read about there is a operating system called Temple OS that was programmed by this guy who I believe his name was Terry Davis. And Terry Davis made Temple OS on his own over the span of 10 years. It was like an amount of code that is incomprehensible to the layman. Like the average person cannot understand nor appreciate this achievement. And I am an average person. I really cannot understand, grasp, or even conceive how large of a project this was. But he single-handedly programmed an entire operating system over the course of 10 years because he claimed to have a revelation from God who told him to do it. I was reading about that and, stuff like that. Like, I love reading about stuff like that, kind of quirky stuff, off the wall kind of stuff. Conspiracy theories, I love that stuff too. Historical conspiracy theories are great, but we might definitely do an episode on that at some point. But, that kind of covers the historical content. Hopefully this episode was a little more enjoyable than the assumption may have been at the beginning. But with that being said, this has been episode 26 of A New Direction. I have been Colin. I hope you all have a great rest of your day or night, whatever time it may be as you watch this. And if... I hope this video finds you in a positive state of mind and in a good place. And if not, just know that things will get better and you are stronger than your circumstances. But with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. Please leave a like and comment. I love responding to the comments and just hearing what you all have to say. So with that being said, I will see y'all next time. This has been Colin, and I'm out.